Bonjour, fit fam, and welcome to In Bed with the Fitness Industry. I am your host and your coach in Cupid, in your careers and your businesses, Nathalie Lacombe. And it's an absolute pleasure to have my dear friend who I miss so much. I'm going to try and stay completely pragmatic today because I miss him so much. And I wish he was lying right next to me. Little spoon, big spoon. We'll have a conversation about that again. Little debate going on when it comes to that. But my dear friend, Paul Galloro, bonjour, mon ami. Welcome.
Hi, I love you.
I love you too. Such a pleasure to have you here today. We're going to go through some technical stuff because, it's going to be hard for Paul and I not just to go on for 2 hours of a love fest. I promise we will get you some really interesting things there. But that is also the way that you live your life and you build your career as well as myself. So let's not be surprised if this is a bit of a love fest, as well it should be, I think. For those of you who have yet to have the pleasure of connecting with Paul. His approach to health and wellness goes well beyond the physical and is very much grounded in love. Paul has 18 years experience in the health and wellness industry. He blends modern sciences, ancient practices, and astrology to help people wildly fall in love with themselves. Beautiful description, my friend. You should be like a copywriter for bios because that's like you in a nutshell. And I must let you guys know there's times where my husband and I, who both of us have had the pleasure of spending time with Paul at our home, at his home, etc., with family, etc. And there's times when Simon and I do something, watch something, have really from every cell in our body have that feel good sensation of being hugged. And every time you look at one another and we're like, it's like Paul, because we transport that with us everywhere we go, which is you just feel dreamy and full of love and light. And it captures the essence of who you are. And when we feel it, we mention you all the time, my friend.
Oh, thank you. I received that. I mean, I'm just beaming right now. I'm smiling so much the back of my head, the muscles in the back of my head are hurting for that. So thank you from the entirety of my being. I received that. Thank you so much. I love you. And I love you both. Can you please give Simon a big squeeze for me?
I will, I promise. I'm going to pick him up from work after we're done here. So it'll go straight from you to him,
Ah,
squeezed as much as I can. So tell us a little bit about your bedtime and wake time routine. What do you like that to be?
well, so I've lately been kind of flowing with the rhythms of nature. So I try to be in bed by 10. That
Mm,
really works for me. I mean, sometimes it's 11 is my cutoff. I'm a zombie by 10:30 anyway. So,
mm,
but then I like to wake up. It's very seasonal. So
mm.
right now, currently, I'm waking up with the sun. So as the sun is rising at about 6, 7, 8, or 7, 6 a.m., I'm coming up with the sun. In the wintertime, I like to get up between 5:45 and 6:15. I love that dark. I feel like I'm the only one awake. I have just a
Mm,
few little lamps on, so it's still pretty dark, and it's just
mm.
that's the best time for me.
I don't know if it's just me, but I find this past winter, so even like a late fall and early winter of 2022, 2023, I found the sunrises and sunsets grandiose, like I noticed them day in and day out, to the extent that I would call Simon or call somebody or take a photo and post it. Something seems to be in the air that I think we needed, that power of nature to let us know where we should be heading in our energy that day. I don't know, did you notice that?
Absolutely, a
Oh, okay.
thousand percent. And I mean, we've seen some stunning sunsets. Like the colors are
Right.
unreal. And the sunrise, I'm so blessed because the room where I do a rise faces the east,
Mm.
and I face a lake. And so I can see the sunrise, and it's just gorgeous. And then when the full moon rises, and I can see the reflection on the like,
Yeah.
it's gorgeous. Like, what else do we need, right?
What else do we need? How better to start or end your day? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what attire do you sleep in? or
Uh,
not?
I don't wear anything because
Yay!
what's the point? And B, I mean, it feels better. I just like it au natural. I mean, I have pajamas, but only because my morning program, we do it in our pajamas. So, um,
Right.
I had to buy something for that.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
otherwise the posting of that on stories on Instagram would be a little bit extra. If
I
you,
mean, maybe more people would register. I don't know.
I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Um, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about authenticity. I remember being in training. So, for Paul was one of the master trainers I had the pleasure of being guided by in my 200-hour RYT, registered yoga teacher training. And I remember in some of the trainings, because you and I was lucky enough to be quite close to you. Some people taking your master classes in those trainings and kind of writing everything down and being like, I want to be just like him. The way that I have felt it is the more authentic you are, because as a coach, as a teacher, as a guide, you have always been so absolutely authentic. What it's done is it's inspired me to know that my authenticity is what will best help guide others. How do you manage that when people are like, oh, I just want to do it? What did you say again? I want it to be just like that, versus them being authentic. How do you manage the concept of authenticity and use it as a guide and as a coach?
Yeah, I have to really pause and think about this one because
Mm,
I don't know. I just show up, right?
mm,
But one of the things I think that is important to me to feel in order to be my authentic self, and then I try to replicate that and pass that on to others, is creating a space safe enough that people feel like they can be themselves, that they don't have to be something that they're not.
mm,
So I understand in a training, hearing something like, ooh, I like that, and wanting to write it down. But my hope is that after they write it down, they give themselves an opportunity to like take it in, to
mm,
experience that, and then make it their own. Because
mhm,
if 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 I'm really honest, I mean I am authentically me, but I am just me because I've experienced life, and my experience, like it's like if I experience something with you, you then become part of me, right?
yes.
And then I go out and I'm not trying to do it exactly like you, but I'm just trying to echo that experience that I've had with you. So, do
Hmm.
you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's interesting, and I think it's the stepping into remembering what inspiration is. And inspiration, I think, doesn't mask anybody else. Inspiration is meant to connect with what's most closest to you. It's certainly
Absolutely.
not intimidation.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
it's inspiring towards themselves rather than towards you. And I do think it's a gift that you have, as I've been, had the pleasure of experiencing it so many times before.
Thank you.
Mm,
I saw this thing on the Instagram a while ago. Tracy Ellis Ross
yes.
was saying something, and I'm gonna butcher what she said, but the gist was um, that she hopes that in her presence, she knows that people are loving her, but she's hoping that what they're actually loving is the reflection of themselves that they see in her, and that they realize that they're not loving her, they're actually loving themselves. And when I heard that and I saw that, it was like a gong went off in my heart, and everything just kind of fell into place. And I was like, that's exactly it.
Mm,
Because I think, it took a while for me to learn to love myself and to actually love myself, not just learn it, but to do it. That,
mm,
one of the reasons why I keep doing what I'm doing is because I want other people's journeys to be easier than mine.
mm. Ooh,
I know
thank
I'm
you
going
for
to cry
sharing.
after just saying
It's all
that.
right. I didn't get any tissues. Where are the tissues from the bedroom? Um,
Just use your sleeve. No.
yeah, cute, very cute. For as long as I've known you, Paul, you have emanated the mind-body connection in all spheres of work and practice for you. how, knowing where you started, I mean, knowing where you started, how do you then keep noticing it? How do you keep learning about the impact of that connection in the world?
Yeah. Okay. So one thing we have to just kind of, I think, identify
Yes.
or acknowledge is what mind body and this concept of mind body is. And I think as an industry, but also as a society as a whole, we've made it something that it's not. We've made it bigger than it really is.
Mm.
So my colleague and friend Claudia Miko, we were having a conversation, and something came up, and she's like, "Yeah, but just don't make a big deal about it." And that sort of became our sort of catchphrase for what spirituality or mind body is. Don't make a big deal about it, but
Just
when
let it be.
just let it be, because
Mm,
all it simply is presence, right? And
mm,
it's being so present that you are experiencing the moment. Now,
mm,
that being said, there are a set of principles. I think of them as like universal laws, and that's what I notice. So I'm not so much looking at somebody sitting there breathing, or somebody's, meditating, whatever that means, or somebody sitting in a lotus position doing this. It's not about that. It's about it's not about form. That would be the form. It's about the content. It's about the presence. It's about being in the flow state. And that's really where you're going to get that, right? And that's what I'm noticing. So it's not so much like I'm noticing your repeater knees. I'm noticing the energy that you're bringing into that. I'm not noticing somebody, doing a yoga flow. I'm noticing the energy that they're bringing in that. And that's really what I'm looking for and what I'm seeing in everything.
And I'll share with everyone. There's an experience that I had again with one of the master classes where Paul taught what I think, because you're being very well, as always, you're a humble person. But I think one of the things that is quite significant about the way that you do that is the seeing and acknowledging and noticing and leaving it be and leaving it its space, regardless of what it is. I
Mm.
think in our industry, when we talk about wellness, we want to be able to, we think about it's everything that's well, it's everything that's fit, it's everything that's happy. But one experience I had with you was during a master class where you were teaching, there was somebody in the class that got quite emotional. They got quite teary. That was crying quite profoundly. And without missing a beat, you gently walked over to the person and you wrapped them around in the scarf that you were wearing, and you continued. Meaning, what I took from that, what I learned from that was you don't need to stop. I'm not gonna give you a tissue. I'm not gonna shift what this is. I see it and I'm wrapping it for it to be protected, for it to be safe, for it to happen. Not shift, not change, not be okay, not be okay. Just I'm letting it happen and I'm wrapping you around it so that you can feel safe to experience what you're experiencing. And so that was a great lesson of mine. And I interpreted it like I remember when I teach my meditation classes, it happens sometimes, even online, when I teach my meditation classes, that people get emotional. And when they come in or when we do a reflection afterwards, they often apologize. And I
Mhm.
work with them to not apologize for emotion, because if they would laugh a lot, they wouldn't apologize. And so to keep the space for it. And even if sometimes when I'll get emotion, I won't try and rush it. I want to honor that space, even virtually, that I saw you do years ago in person, to just be, if this is what you're feeling, that's what you're feeling, and it's okay. It's safe for you to be here. Thank you for the trust in actually letting that come to surface. So I appreciate that. So I think what I would, so all this to say that I'm layering on what you're saying, in that regardless of what it is you're noticing in,
Mhm.
allowing it to be, not just the good, but
Yeah.
allowing it to be, right?
Absolutely. Because, again, this is another thing that we do as just humans. We try to hide the bad stuff and focus only on the good, hoping that the bad stuff's going to eventually go away and the good stuff's going to stay. But, actually, this came up in a conversation with a colleague today. So I teach at a gym just outside of the town that I live in, and one of the members was talking about how she's opening a rage room right across the street from the gym, and I was like, "Girl, sign me up! As soon as it's open, I'm gonna be in there. I needed it last week, et cetera, et
Yeah.
cetera." And my colleague was like, "You rage?" And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Absolutely!" Like we,
Yeah.
when I feel something, and these are my Scorpio tendencies. When I feel things, I want to feel them. I want it to consume me because I'm blessed enough to be a human being on this planet at this time. So why not? And I think we need to allow that. And I mean, I can't imagine as a yoga teacher going into a space and if somebody had an emotional response saying, stop that,
Mm.
right? Because the whole idea is for it to flow. And I think it's important that we feel these things,
Mm.
regardless
It,
of what
it,
they are.
yeah, and rather than trying to fix them,
Yeah, because it's
um,
nothing to be fixed,
nothing to be
right? It's
fixed.
coming up to be experienced and then to move on.
Mm.
Like, case in point with the rage room. I'm going to go and I'm going to experience this rage. I'm not going to direct it to somebody.
Mm.
Me many years ago would have internalized that rage and then it would have came out in my relationships and that would have been horrible. But I'm going to
Mm.
experience it as big as I need to and then I'm going to move on from it, right?
Mm. Mm. Go with it. Yeah, very interesting. And I mean, it's a piece that the thing you're saying about mind body, I think it was Lawrence Biscontini that said it first one time when he was like, he always found it funny that there was like the fitness studio and then the mind body studio. And he's
Yeah.
like, if the mind body studio is a mind body studio, is the other one a body studio? Like, where are you supposed to leave your mind at the door when you're going to do kickboxing or burpees or whatever, when in reality it can be just as mindful? And I think it's something that we're seeing, if anything, people have been citing mindfulness and presence and mental health and all of those benefits as being the reason why they move, the reason why they exercise. Have you noticed that integration of health and wellness and mindfulness change over the last few years, especially because it was taken away from us? And then sometimes when something's taken away, you assess it, you reflect on it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I see that it's being integrated more, which is lovely. And also what I've noticed though, it's almost like we're kind of going two separate ways. It's like one part of the industry is going still balls to the wall, tits to the wind, go hard or go home. And the other side, just I'll leave that visual with you. But
Yeah.
then the other side is going into the let's be more mindful. Let's enjoy this experience and incorporating all the mental wellness bits into it. So we still kind of have that separation and what and I'm going to go back to what I said about the flow state. And again, this idea of mindfulness doesn't have to be still. I
Mhm.
can I can run a marathon and still be meditating, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the if you remember my chakra dance party, I presented it at CanFit Pro a few times in the past. I still do a similar, I don't call it that anymore, but I do a practice. It's based on an Osho meditation where he says, forget the dancer and become the dance. And
Mm.
the idea of that is to
Mm.
forget about the doing,
Mm.
embody the being, right?
Mm.
So if you're a swimmer, forget about the swim or forget about swimming or being the swimmer and be one with the water. Just let it consume you and be basically like a fish. Fish doesn't know that he's or she is in the water. Do you know what I'm saying? Same thing for a runner. Like be the wind. I know that sounds very esoteric and out there, but just move in such a way that the past is no longer in your mind as you're running. The future is no longer in your mind as you're running. All that's in your mind as you're running is your heartbeat and your breath and your feet hitting the ground. That boom, boom, boom,
You know
boom.
what's the irony of that is I would feel like people would feel like it requires a ton of focus and concentration. Yet, what it sounds like when you're talking about it is absolute freedom.
1,000%.
So you think you're
Yeah.
like, I have to just be in it, I have to be so deeply connected to it, when in reality what you're probably doing is disconnecting and
Yeah.
being super free.
Hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah. I just want to add one more thing to that. I
Yeah,
think
yeah,
the other
yeah.
thing that we need to remember as fit pros is if we're going to be doing that intense stuff, I mean, I don't want to make it sound like stress is bad. We need stress, right? Our bodies respond well to stress. If we didn't have stress, we wouldn't, do the things that we need to do to stay alive, right? Like we need to acknowledge that. But we don't want to live in that space. So we need to understand. So if we are going to go hard or go home, make sure that we do come home to ourselves after
Yeah.
going so hard. You
Go
know what I
home.
mean?
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
calm the
Absolutely.
nervous system because that stress stuff is going to keep us in that stress zone if we don't bring it back.
Yeah. Balance it out.
Mhm.
So for people who might come more from the fitness world, maybe less from the yoga, mind, body, etc. type of world, this integration of mind, body can sound really exciting, yet overwhelming. Like you said, maybe esoteric, maybe these kinds of things. What are some accessible first steps for somebody to start integrating it? I'm going to guess you're going to say for themselves before they start to try and guide and teach others into it. But what do you see as being the like, these are some good first steps for you to get curious and start to play with this?
Number one thing, and it's going to sound so cliche, but it's the best thing that you can do is focus on your breathing.
Mm,
Because really, if we think about it, the mind body connection, and going back to it can be in anything, it doesn't just need to be in yoga or Pilates or any of that stuff. The mind
mm,
body connection, if we think about it, our mind affects our nervous system, right?
mm,
And then our nervous system affects our body.
mhm,
Our breath is the only thing that can connect to both, right? We can focus our awareness, our mind on our breathing, and then our breathing will soothe our nervous system. So even as we're doing that intensity, that intense stuff, working with intensity, focusing on deep, slow, expansive breaths. I mean, I know if you're, going hard and your heart's pumping, you're breathing quickly, but bring it back to that deep, expansive breath. And then beyond that, feel the breath, feel it expand your body. I know at one point, there was this, people would say, instructors would say, breathe into your abdomen or breathe into your back. And then you'd hear some people be like, well, you can't really breathe into those spaces. Would say to them now, get over yourself, because what we're talking about is breathe that essence of whatever you're in into those spaces to then expand. Because
mm,
that's the other thing too. We're constantly contracting. We're contracting our muscles. We're contracting ourselves to fit in this world.
mm.
Our breath is our opportunity to expand everything, take it all in, and send it outward beyond our body.
Mm.
I don't know.
Start with
I don't know what I just said, but I
yes,
hope
yes,
it
yes. I
made
know I
sense.
totally got it. So so start with breath.
A thousand
And it
percent.
is to that point, it's accessible, it's all of that. And I mean, as much as we're talking about it now from the perspective of mind body integration, the reality is it's what athletic coaches use. It's what, you know what I mean? It's what they use in the military to help them. It's what they use in so many, it's very, very present,
Yeah.
regardless of what it is. And in competition and all kinds of things there, use it in powerlifting. So regardless of what technique of breath it is, the whole point is breath is the gateway, pathway. Is that
I'd
how
say
you
it
would?
is the way.
The way
Because
is
yeah,
there
because
you go.
because I'm going to talk yoga for a moment here, but then we're going to apply it to everything else. In yoga, we have pranayama, breath control. If
Yeah.
you can, and prana isn't breath. Prana is life force.
Mm,
Breath is prana, but prana is not breath only. Prana
mm,
is you and I having a conversation and that energy that connects us. Prana is the way the sun rises. Prana is life force energy. So when we can control that life force energy, so we can control our breath to activate our nervous system if we need it. We can use our breath to de-stress ourselves when we need it. So it really is the way. If you can learn how to breathe in different ways so that you can be present to whatever it is that you need to be present to, I think you're set.
even so I'll ask you, even if you're uncomfortable doing it, or especially if it's uncomfortable doing it?
I would say especially because here's really what's happening, and I think why people get uncomfortable with their breath. Because when we breathe and when we do it mindfully, we have to feel our body. And a lot of us have stored, and I'm going to get a little deep here. A lot of us have stored some experiences and emotions in our body, thinking we're hiding them away. And then the second we start to breathe into these spaces, we dislodge that, and then boom, all of a sudden it comes out again. That's why in yoga class we have those emotional releases. And I
Mm,
think a lot of people are so disconnected from their breath because they're disconnected from their body, and they're disconnected from their body because they stuffed emotions down, and they stuffed emotions down because they didn't want to feel them.
mm,
And the more we stuff them down, the more they're going to want to be felt. So we might as well just feel them and let them flow.
in in safe spaces,
Yes.
or
Oh,
through guided work with the right teachers, and that's okay for all of us to find the right teacher. So Paul being one for me, others being perhaps being that for others, or being there. And there's times where, I mean, it's just like when audio meditation, there's people that I listen to and I'm like, you've got to be kidding me, whereas other people, I'm like, I would listen to them for hours, right?
yeah.
So find the right ones. There's just so much of it out there.
Yeah.
Find one, start practicing,
Mhm.
and then stay curious and see where that can take you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna add one more thing because a lot of
Mm,
times when these emotions come up, yes, I'm talking about just feel them. And from my perspective, I don't care where they came from. I don't care how you got them. Just feel them and let them move through you in that safe space. Though, if you feel that you need to talk to somebody about it, find a therapist or a practitioner or someone that is going to allow you the space to talk it out, but then also get you back into your body and integrate that.
mm,
Because I think, therapy is wonderful, but if we're just focusing on talking, we're just re traumatizing ourselves, talking about the thing over and over again. We got to
mm,
get back into our body to dislodge the energy that's trapped in there.
Interesting perspective. Thank you for sharing that with us, Paul.
Yeah.
As we have these types of conversations and you see what's out there, and you mentioned when we were talking offline that you started teaching in a gym again and you're doing some work online and you're doing all of these things. When you see what's around you and your peers and your colleagues and how the industry is evolving, what inspires you? What makes you optimistic?
Oh, what's making me optimistic is that people are starting to see more the whole picture of wellness and
Mm,
health, and not just being the body and looking a certain way. We're
mm,
really getting into this space of wanting to feel good. And I think, the events of the last couple of years have really brought us to that space of I don't care what life looks like anymore. I just want it to feel good. You know what I
mm,
mean? And I mean, I think this is going to resonate with you quite a bit, but really leaning into pleasure. I
mm.
love that you bring the senses into your movement experiences, and I love that you're like, I'm assuming that au plaisir in French means with pleasure.
Yes.
Okay,
Or
so
to the pleasure, to the pleasure.
like
Yes. Yeah.
how like that is just, and not just from the way we often think of pleasure, right? But just the indulging in the experience of being human. I
Mm,
think that makes me hopeful to see that people are, we may not be there exactly, but people are oriented in a direction that's going to lead them there, because right now they're more interested in feeling good
mm,
rather than only looking good.
mm. Thank you.
And I just have to say, sorry, I know you're trying to wrap us up or something,
No.
but I just want to, okay, so at CanFit Pro this past last year summer, I walked into the room just as you received your award.
Mm.
And I nearly burst into glitter. I was so excited. And I love how you ended it. And I'm gonna butcher this because I was so in the moment. I was just experiencing it and not writing it down. But you said something to the effect of, as fit pros, we need to stop talking about what we look like and start focusing on what it feels like, or something to that effect. Do you remember what you said?
Make it less about the bodies we sculpt and more about the lives we save.
Yes, that. And to me, that's also about just feeling good, saving lives, changing lives, just
Mhm.
feeling what this life is all about. And
Mhm.
I want to thank you for bringing that to the industry because it is so needed. And who better than you to champion that message and bring it to the masses. So thank you.
Thank you, my friend. It's been an absolute plaisir to connect with you right now. I want to do it every day. I want to do it more often, but your generosity and your thought provokingness with compassion and kindness is something that I have always appreciated, and I'm sure that our listeners appreciate now too. Merci, mon ami. Je t'aime
Mm,
beaucoup.
I love you.